Hi there, it's Mint Doves. Today I'm going through all my sketchbooks. I'm pretty much doing the artist equivalent of reading a super personal childhood diary, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm sort of nervous about it. Especially because a lot of my old stuff, even my more recent stuff, is kinda cringe. Nevertheless, I've always found it entertaining to watch other people share their sketchbook journeys online, so I decided to overcome my fear of speaking on camera and create my own version to document my journey as an artist. Before I crack open the first sketchbook, I found some drawings from around the same time period that I wanted to share because they feel a lot more complete compared to many of the unfinished doodles in this sketchbook, and therefore just more fun to look at. I was around 8 to 10 years old when I drew these, and I was super into warrior cats and video games. I really liked Animal Jam and Spyro stuff, but the majority of my drawings were warrior cats due to the fandom being a super huge influence on my life at the time. If you couldn't tell from the anime eyes and cat bangs, it was the golden age of the Warrior Cats fandom, with central figures like Ginger Ninja, Flightfoot Warrior, and Silver Wolf Knight. Also, for some reason, I would return back to the sketchbook months or even a year later to redraw a drawing that was in it. I'm not quite sure why I did this, but it seems to be a pattern that comes up a lot in a lot of my earlier stuff. It's a little annoying because it kind of throws off the aesthetic of gradually improving and kind of confuses things. I think the most frustrating part about looking through the sketchbook is just how much space I wasn't utilizing. I mean, if I really was going to keep messing up, I might as well have done it on the same pages instead of just drawing like a singular circle and then moving on to the next page, especially when the sketchbook was like so big. Usually, like, I use rather small sketchbooks, and in comparison, like, this is huge, and I just, like, wasted so much space. I can't really be too hard on myself because I was a kid, and I feel like a lot of times as a kid, you sort of don't know how to use a sketchbook correctly, and you're not really thinking about using it correctly, and you're just kind of trying to have fun. So The second influx of art comes from 2014. I was in 6th grade at the time, and I was drawing a lot. I was at the height of my Warrior Cats obsession, and it's arguably better than the stuff from a few years back, if you ask me. So I mean, I guess there was improvement. But it's more or less the same old rodeo of me not utilizing the space in my sketchbook very well. I actually began dabbling in digital art at this time. Of course, it was super duper new to me, and I still preferred drawing on paper just because it was more comfortable. I was still young enough at this time to not really dabble in drawing anything outside of little anime-esque cats, just because I was around 11 years old, and to me that was all that really mattered and all I was really interested in. I mean, at this time I was kind of just seeing art as something to do for fun, as like a pastime, and not really considering it as something I would do in the future. I didn't see any reason to draw anything other than cats, because my goal alone at the time was that I wanted to mimic or be similar to the popular artists I saw on YouTube. This was the era when Copic markers began to be the talk of the town in the artist community. I desperately wanted them, and I made my mom buy them for me. Unfortunately, I didn't use them very well, trying to make them work on the wrong types of paper, and overall, I didn't really have the skill to bring out their full potential, but you know, I enjoyed playing with them, and that's all that counts. Surprise, surprise, I was drawing more cats and the occasional other animal, not really interested in trying anything out of my comfort zone. I guess I tried my hand a few times at what looks like an attempt to make storyboards for a Warrior Cats AMV. Obviously, I was completely oblivious to how to properly storyboard, and it kind of, as a result, looks like a messy, poorly drawn comic strip. Here's a better display of my using of Copic markers at the time, cutouts for probably what were art trades on Instagram, and just some other art I found from 2014. A lot of artists that I looked up to on the internet would do art trades where they would draw it with Copics and then cut the drawings out and laminate them and then send them to the person they were trading with. And I really wanted to do that, except I was 11 and I didn't know how to laminate nor send stuff to someone who was super far away. So yeah, I ended up doing a lot of cutout like drawings, but they didn't end up going anywhere because I just didn't know how to send art to other people when I was 11. 2015 marked the beginning of a rather frustrating artistic journey for me. I was 13 and my interests began to expand past just warrior cats. I started getting into anime, and around this time quickly found myself struggling because I had no experience drawing humans or anything human related. This proved incredibly frustrating for me as someone who had put so much time and effort into drawing, to realize that I would have to start from ground zero when it came to human anatomy. In this sketchbook, I practically avoided it completely, and more or less just drew cats or wolf faces, feeling honestly too insecure to try and jump out of my comfort zone. Every time I did try to draw a human character, it always left me feeling very frustrated. As you can see here, I courageously attempted to practice drawing the human form and failed miserably. So every time I kind of did this at this point, I just kept going back to cats because that was my comfort zone. I was a little more courageous in this book and tried to draw the occasional anime character, but kinda kept going back to cats. Again, this was probably one of the most difficult times for me artistically because my frontal lobe was developing as I began my teenage years, and I was just realizing that I wanted to grow as an artist, like, for real, and that meant I had to draw more than just cats. Yeah, so this book had a lot of failed attempts. I was also trying to get more into using pens rather than just pencils, and that especially didn't fare well because once you mess up with pens, you can't really undo the same way you can with pencils. I still did stick mostly with pencils at this time. I tried to draw stylistic anthropomorphic characters, but then quickly realized you also need to know human anatomy to do this properly. So drawing furries proved to be just as frustrating for me as drawing humans or anime characters in that sense. This time I was looking through DeviantArt a lot, especially at the furry art, which was really inspiring to me, especially the kind of more flowery pastel aesthetic drawings, and I wanted to draw like that, so I was attempting that in this sketchbook as well. At this point, I was pretty okay at drawing any sort of four-legged animal, though I was most comfortable drawing faces. I don't know why, but in this book, I was just obsessed with the idea of super detailed eyes. I just discovered that there are different types of pencils with different levels of boldness, and I wanted to use that to try and make anime eyes, and I got kind of obsessed with that. You can see most of the sketchbook is literally just eyes. Yeah, there's not really much going on in this sketchbook, nor were there really any attempts to grow as an artist. I ended up giving up on it pretty quickly, and so many pages were left unfilled. In 2017, I began to slowly dip my toes into studying human anatomy more and more. I got ever so slightly more comfortable with drawing human faces, so that gave me a little bit more confidence. I was still struggling with it though quite a bit. At least I was kind of trying. A lot of these sketchbooks I was just drawing straight up with pencil, and I never ended up getting far enough in the drawing itself to end up feeling like I could color it. And at least in this sketchbook, there were some instances where I tried to color a sketch. Towards the end of this sketchbook, you could kind of tell I was getting super frustrated and just annoyed with like trying and attempting to draw like human anatomy and just like not working out. And yeah, a lot of those like pages towards the end are kind of filled with just like scribbly gibberish. 2018 is when I locked in. I said to myself, no more silly business, we are going to conquer this anatomy thing once and for all. I went into the sketchbook with the mindset that I knew I was going to start out really awful, and instead of hoping for near perfection each time I tried to draw, I hoped that little by little I could notice even the smallest of improvements as I went on in this sketchbook. So I whipped out some anatomy books I had, as well as the good old-fashioned Pinterest board, and began doing studies. Even then, I occasionally fell back to cats just to refuel myself and regain confidence in my artistic abilities. For some reason at this time, I began doodling on my school assignments a lot more often. And it dawned upon me that I could just cut out the doodles that I liked and scrapbook them into the sketchbook, and I did this a lot with this sketchbook, especially because this was a super busy school year for me. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I was also super into Star vs. the Forces of Evil at this time, and there's a lot of Starco stuff. As you can see, I actually began to get a better grasp of drawing people, and in a stylistic form too. And for the first time in forever, I was actually somewhat satisfied with what I was drawing. This was the year I discovered that Pinterest was a huge and fantastic tool for references, and I literally have no clue what I would do without it even now. At this point, I had found a style of drawing that I was rather happy with, and just drawing straight up felt much more comfortable and natural. I was also trying to reach out of my comfort zone and drawing things I would have never considered drawing before, like very random, rare animals, backgrounds, and clothing. These few pages are actually some of my favorite in this book because I really locked in to study anatomy. It's also amazing to compare these gestural drawings to the ones found in the first few pages of this sketchbook. You can really see the improvement. I also spent some time studying the male form because I found myself drawing girls a lot more than dudes because it was just easier to me. In 2019, I was busy applying for colleges, and I was more focused on improving my digital art than just sketching in sketchbooks, so there isn't really that much from this year. I, however, really like the paper found in this particular sketchbook, and I think it could hold watercolor and other fun pens, so I might actually go back to this sketchbook and use the paper I didn't end up covering. 2020 was my first year of college, and also the COVID-19 year. I used this sketchbook mostly just to do gestural drawings, specifically pen to paper drawings, which means like I didn't sketch beforehand and just went straight onto that piece of paper with pen and hoped for the best. Yeah, there's just pretty much very casual doodling here. At this point, I was pretty confident in my anatomy. I mean, I can't say it's perfect, and that's part of the fun of gestural drawings is that you don't really have to worry about being perfect, and it's more just about the flow and just kind of relaxing. At least that's how I see it, and that's how I approach this sketchbook. I do kind of wish that I used more color in sketchbooks and just like overall, because even in my most recent stuff, I tend to just go straight in with pen and then just go on to the next page and don't really try and complete full drawings, at least. I just was never that kind of person when it came to doing sketchbooks. Maybe in the future though. My sketchbook from 2021 wasn't too different from my 2020 sketchbook, except now that COVID was kind of subsiding and people were starting to go back into the real world, I was leaving the house and trying to do some drawing from life. So when I went somewhere, I would sit and draw, or I would take a picture and draw it later. I was in person in college at this point, and I took a concept design class where the teacher would show us scenes from various movies and then would give us 3 to 5 minutes to do a quick little thumbnail drawing of each individual, shot or segment. Yeah, a lot of this stuff was also very casual and gestural and low effort. I don't know why, but the sketchbook ends with a bunch of animal doodles. I don't know. This is a bit embarrassing to admit, but in the more recent years, I have seriously been lacking in the sketchbook department. I had to make a thesis film for college, and all my brain and art power had to be turned over to that so I could graduate. And yeah, there's barely anything. How disappointing. I was thinking maybe this year I'll go super serious into Inktober to make it up, so we'll see. And that's about it. If this video ends up doing well, maybe I'll do another video similar. Or if it doesn't, maybe I'll do it anyways because I want to. I would love to just buckle down and try to do a sketchbook very seriously. Maybe even for the first time in my life actually complete a sketchbook instead of giving up halfway and then buying a new one. I guess we'll have to wait and see.